Call to order the September 1st meeting of the West Sacramento City Council and Redevelopment Agency. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff tonight in the pledge, which will be led by Mr. Steve Palmer. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The council did not meet in closed session this evening, so we're going to proceed directly to our regular session agenda, item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the City Council or the Redevelopment Agency. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the council on this or any other item this evening to please fill out one of the cards that's available at the front door and turn it in to the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everybody has a chance to be heard, so we ask that all comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. We also recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can involve some amount of anxiety, so we ask there not be any boos or catcalls or applause or demonstrations, and that we maintain a civil discourse here in the chambers. Madam Clerk, is your flip chart there too? Okay, great. In front of the clerk is a flip chart that we use for members of the public to be able to see which agenda item we're on at any one moment. So the numbers on that flip chart correspond with the agenda items that are on the printed agenda. So I have no request to speak under item 1A. So we're going to proceed to item 1B, which is council communications. Are there any reports or other communications this evening? Mr. Johannesson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The West Sacramento Housing Development Corporation met on August 19th. And the two items, probably the main items for discussion were the River Rose property. We have 13 out of 22 of the space is vacant, and the issue there is some criminal activity in that neighborhood. They've installed cameras, and that seems to have solved it for the last 2 or 3 weeks. However, there's still the issue of whether or not the rents are appropriate or not, or whether this lull is going to continue. So the HDC has started a rent survey. The question is whether or not they need to lower the rent or the rents are fine the way they are in order to increase the vacancy and also to increase the security of that facility. And then on the 19th, the 10-year homeless plan commission met. They're continuing to discuss how the coordination of social services as affecting homeless in Yolo County will continue, and we're also looking at realistically, what can the group implement in the first year based on the budgetary constraints? You probably all know that the city was a participant in adopting the 10-year plan. We've had a fairly aggressive task list for the first year. The problem now is that the county in particular is being hit really hard with cuts in social services, so there just isn't the staff time to be able to do a lot. So we're basically regrouping, looking at what we can do within that first year realistically and moving from that point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johannesson. Other reports or communications? Mayor Pro Tem Villegas.
Just for briefly, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The Sacramento County Regional Sanitation District met last week, and I think it's reported in the Sacramento Bee there. And I just want to keep reminding the council that the MPDES permit, the permit that was required by the district in order to continue to discharge sewer, is likely to be issued, at least on a temporary basis, sometime this week. And we're concerned about that because obviously the permit's going to have additional requirements for different higher levels of treatment that we're currently utilizing, and so therefore there are going to be costs associated with that. So we don't have the numbers yet, but I just want to continue to remind the council that that's on its way. So we're bracing for that. The Universal Preschool Executive Committee met last week. Just want to let the council know we did do some strategic planning in light of the current economic climate and the difficulty of raising funds for Universal Preschool. It's a worthwhile initiative that's been very successful here in West Sac, but we needed to face the reality of what might happen down the road if we get if we have no funding, if we only receive partial funding based on all the different funding sources that we currently utilize, or if we receive full funding, which could also happen based on some initiatives that are floating around at the state level. So we're going through strategic planning to set the program up to be able to navigate through any of those three scenarios. And staff, I will say, has done a wonderful job of laying that out. And none of that relies on city resources. It's all based on other ways in which to generate revenue for the program. So that's a good thing. And then this evening, earlier this evening, the Port Commission met, and the one item that we did receive is a update on the ship channel deepening project, which actually is moving along very nicely. That's it.
All right, thank you. The Transportation Committee for the Sacramento Area Council of Governments met last Thursday, and a couple of key items. One, we are wrapping up our project delivery reports for the year, and I see Ms. Pasco is smiling. The city has a very strong record on project delivery. That is, when we get allocated funding, federal or state funding at the regional scale, for a project, we go out and we build it. Now, that doesn't sound remarkable, and it's not for us, but for a lot of places, they just don't get the projects done. They're unable to, they run into right-of-way issues, or they can't get their environmental work done, or some weather's bad or whatever, and they're not prepared to deal with it. We have, the region has one of the strongest project delivery records in the state. That's important, both in terms of keeping the money flowing, but when other regions in California fail to deliver the projects that they had, we can use their money. So eventually it runs out, but what it means is that projects that we might have on our plan for the region, for the city, that we might have intended to build, to fund in 2014, that we may be able to fund in 2012. So it's a real advantage to us to, we have, I think that what the report we got was that we're spending about 200% of our allocation each cycle. Now, at some point, we'll run out of projects, and others will catch up, conceivably. But this has been going on for quite some time, and we're definitely a significant contributor to the project delivery record of the region here in the city. And it's one of the reasons why our grant applications do well at the regional agency, because we do have that good record, and it does matter in terms of bringing additional resources into the project. Even the West Capitol Avenue Streetscape Phase 2, which is now done. So that was one key issue. The other one, which I know has been in the news, is the status of the rail yards project in Sacramento, because it continues to be one of the key allocations of funding at the regional level from the stimulus package. And so the whole question around what the State Department of Housing and Urban Community Development might do with respect to their Prop 1C grants, given the situation between Thomas and their lender, has created some uncertainty at the regional level as well. So we're monitoring that closely. At this point, we still think that the public improvements that are being funded by Prop 1C are still viable in that mix, but we're watching it very carefully. The city is, swearing up and down it's not a problem, but we want to make sure we can deliver those, because we don't have time to reprogram the stimulus money elsewhere. But the more critical pieces, we want to make sure that the Prop 1C and Prop 1B monies get expended, because those were highly competitive on a statewide basis. Colonel Leedy, the new commanding officer of the Sacramento district for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, was here at City Hall and at the port and on our levees last week. We hosted him here in his first. He's been in office for a very short period of time, but this is one of his early stops. And he emphasized how important, well, he said two things. One is he wanted to make sure that we knew there are thousands of West Sacramentos across the country, which reminded him, no, there's only one. There are other cities that might seem like us, but there's only one. And he said, from his perspective, there's only one, because his job is to make sure that we get these projects done, the deepening project and the levee improvement project in particular. But it was a very productive visit. He was very attentive. You could tell he'd been thoroughly briefed and was very engaged in both the briefing and in the tour. And I heard back from the staff in the Sacramento district office that the word has gotten back that it was a positive visit, a productive visit, and our staff did a great job of conveying to him that we appreciate the cooperative and collaborative approach that a lot of the folks in the Sacramento district office have taken with us. So he should be a good advocate in general, but particularly on those two projects that are very important to us. On the same day, the state's new Delta Stewardship Council held its meeting here in City Hall, which was opportune. The Stewardship Council was taking up adoption of its interim plan. So recall this a year ago when this legislature adopted the water bill, and they included the provision that said that essentially any covered action, which is a lot of actions and projects and land use decisions in the whole Delta, including the secondary zone, would be subject to potential appeal and review by the Stewardship Council, except that we got a carve out that said, unless it's something that's consistent with the region's sustainable communities plan. that's being adopted under SB 375. The Delta plan that the council is adopting, under which all these appeals and stuff would occur, is not scheduled for adoption until next year, which is the same time as the Sustainable Communities Plan, so there's no problem. But the Delta Stewardship Council was preparing last week to adopt its interim plan, and there is no such thing as an interim Sustainable Communities Plan. So I went to testify before them to encourage them to essentially not count actions today. I mean, they don't have the resources and they don't have the detail in their interim plan to really assess everything out there. Every potential covered action cannot get to the council. So urging them to essentially set aside anything in the areas that are covered by something that's roughly equivalent to a Sustainable Communities Plan. In our case, that would be the blueprint, the Sacramento Regional Blueprint, during this interim period until the Sustainable Communities Plan is going to be done. They were concerned that the Sustainable Community Strategy might be late, and so they can't have that happen. That's being done under the committee that I chair at SACR. We will be on time. So they were responsive. Phil Eisenberg especially sort of gets this issue, and a couple of the other members of the council as well. They had asked, they wished that there was somewhere closer to get coffee, which is odd because the Boo is not that far away. But it gave me a moment to remind them about how difficult it is to do these infill projects, and that if you wanted to start a little startup coffee shop or something, or other small business in an infill area here, and you had to go through their whole process to prove that the opening of a coffee shop or of a yogurt shop was not going to impact the Delta Smelt, and that it was not likely to be in the path of the Perfil Canal, that if you had to go through that whole process and it was subject to appeal for 150 days and then a potential court action, you just wouldn't do it. And so if they're not careful with how they implement their regulations, and if they don't exclude us in the way that the legislation anticipated, that they could have a chilling effect on the kind of infill development that they want to see happen. So it was a good meeting. They adopted the interim plan and gave direction to their staff to deal with this issue. And I know there's going to be a work group, and I'm sure I'll be invited to serve on it. But I think it was a good progress point with respect to making sure that we don't get treated like a colony. All right, if there's no other communications or reports, we have no appointments this evening, so that brings us to item 2, which is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing the Surviving Parents Coalition for its dedication to protecting our youth from abuse and emotional turmoil. Is there a motion on the proclamation? Second. It's been moved by Mr. Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Beers. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none. That motion carries. We've asked Mr. Johannesson to make the presentation of the proclamation on behalf of the council.
Well, it's my pleasure as a member of the West Sacramento City Council to recognize the contribution Surviving Parents Coalition is making to creating the awareness for abuse of children and young adults. And I'd like to present this proclamation to you. Whereas the Surviving Parents Coalition was established in 2007, bringing together parents of children who were abducted, murdered, sexually assaulted, recovered, or are still missing, to advocate for legislative and educational initiatives that will aid in the prevention of crimes against children and young adults. And whereas the Surviving Parents Coalition works to prevent the victimization of children and young people and challenges communities nationwide to take a leadership role in creating a safer world for our children. And whereas the Coalition's Child Safety Education Institute or initiative encompasses children's safety education and personal empowerment, internet safety, child ID kits, as well as public awareness campaigns. And whereas through their legislative efforts, the Coalition aims to significantly improve public awareness about prevention, as well as the legislative progress, facilitate hands-on safety education in schools for children through young adults, and promote best practices for law enforcement and communities in responding to predatory crimes. And whereas the Ride for Their Lives campaign, sponsored by the Surviving Parents Coalition, is a national cross-country bike ride dedicated to raising public awareness, capital funds, and legislative focus on stopping predatory crimes against children and young adults. And whereas the 3 causes being focused on during this ride are DNA on felony arrests, which passed in the state of California in November 2004, the Adam Walsh Act, which helps protect our children from repeat sexual offenders, and the Protect Our Children Act, which funds the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force and has already identified more than 600,000 computers used to promote child pornography. And whereas a cross-country ride that began on August 21st in Rochester, New York, was with a visit from Surviving Parents Coalition members Ed Smart and Ahmad Rizvar, will arrive in Sacramento September 14th and ends in Los Angeles, California on September 22, 2010. Now therefore be proclaimed that the City Council of the City of West Sacramento does hereby recognize the Surviving Parents Coalition for its Ride for Their Lives campaign and for its inspiring dedication to ensuring the safety of our youth from abuse and emotional turmoil. Thank you very much.
I did receive a letter from our Surviving Parents Coalition board members, and I'd like to read that if I may take a moment to do so. Dear honorable members of the West Sacramento City Council, thank you for recognizing and supporting Ed Smart and Ahmad Rivasfar as they represent the Surviving Parents Coalition on this national public awareness campaign, The Ride for Their Lives. The SPC is an alliance of parents, like us, whose children were abducted, sexually assaulted, murdered, recovered, or are still missing.
The members of the Surviving Parents Coalition have joined together to create a national movement to stop predatory crimes against children by providing awareness, legislative progress, and educational programs for children and adults that will increase public safety and reduce crimes against children and youth. Every year in America, an estimated 800,000 children are reported missing, about 2,200 each day. Children are the largest group of victims of all violent crime. 1 in 16 children are victims of sexual assault. There are over 800,000 cases of substantiated child abuse each year. A child victimized by violence is 8 times more likely to be incarcerated. Child abuse costs an estimated $104 billion per year. Every community and individual has a role and opportunity to make a difference in the national movement for child protection. Community by community, we will educate and mobilize every concerned citizen with options and action steps for all of us to be a part of the solution. We stand together in word, action, and commitment to protect our children and our future. By advocating for change through education, legislative responsibility, and community action, we will create a better and safer world, one child at a time. Thank you for your leadership in supporting the Ride for Their Lives. Sincerely, Surviving Parents Coalition.
With that being said, the city event is in Sacramento on the 14th of September from 3 to 6 on the west steps of the Capitol. We invite the entire city of West Sacramento to come and join us. And obviously the city council, you're more than welcome to come down as well and possibly present this to our president, Ed Smart, when he arrives on his bicycle. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I had the opportunity to speak with the Mayor of Rochester, New York, Bob Duffy, who chairs the Public Safety Committee for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, who said that the departing event was very powerful, and we certainly should be doing everything we can in our region to be supportive in the same way, and I hope as many people as possible can be there on the 14th to show our support for the work that the coalition is doing. It's tragic that it's still necessary, but it is. And so I think we would all encourage our neighbors and colleagues in the community to participate. So thank you for bringing this to us today. All right, item 3 is a presentation from Holy Cross Executive Director Rick Maya regarding plans for Holy Cross School. This is an item requested by Mayor Pro Tem Villegas. Welcome, Mr. Maya. Rick, I think the microphone, there's a button at the base of the microphone. In front of you, at the bottom of the.
Is that better? Great, thank you. Before I talk about the project that the Diocese of Sacramento is undertaking at the campus of Holy Cross School, I think it's important, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the history of Holy Cross. As many of you know, Holy Cross Parish and Holy Cross School have been a staple in the West Sacramento community for the past 60 years. Over the past 60 years, not only have they provided fantastic education to our youth, but also accessibility to social services and programs, not only for the Catholic community, obviously, but also for the community at large. And I think it's important that we take a moment to celebrate all their achievements, because as I understand more about the history of the parish and the school, I know that it has clearly played a very important role. And that's why it's so important tonight that we talk about the sustainability of Holy Cross School. Many of our schools throughout the Diocese of Sacramento and other private Catholic schools across the country are in danger of closing for many different reasons: financial insolvency, declining enrollment, school choice, which isn't a bad thing. But consequently, what we've seen is many schools, not only across the country, but within our diocese as well, consequently close. And this year, in fact, we had 3 schools scheduled to close throughout the Diocese of Sacramento, one of which was, at the time, Holy Cross. Over the past 6 or 7 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of declining enrollment for various reasons, but also significant uncertainty around the fiscal and financial performance of the school. Now, back in January, Bishop Soto had asked me to do an analysis of the school before there was a decision made on whether to continue or to cease operations. And one of the things that I did is I looked at the potential in the market and the importance of the school from a community perspective. And what we found is that over 3,000 kids live and reside in the immediate serving area of the parish and the school. And we were at the time only had about 100 students at that. And so, I was convinced that it's not a matter of we've already maximized the market. It's clearly we were just missing opportunities throughout the community. I also looked at the academic performance of the school, and that's something that we all should do, whether it's private, public, or charter schools throughout the region. And I can tell you that we were not performing from an academic perspective anywhere to where we would expect or anyone else would expect from an educational standpoint. So after doing an analysis, I made a bold request to the bishop and to the diocese that as opposed to closing the school, we actually need to invest in Holy Cross School because of the importance that it plays to the community and really the opportunity that we have to help further the academic opportunities to help serve the youth of West Sacramento. So what we've decided to do is to really raise the bar and the expectations from an academic perspective. And you hear in many cases, oftentimes schools that serve underserved communities tend to perform the worst from an academic perspective. They tend to be the schools that don't look the best, so the kids don't feel good about their school where they spend most of their time during the day. What we're doing here at the Diocese of Sacramento is we're going to raise the bar from an education perspective. And we're proud to announce that this year we've actually converted Holy Cross to now which is now called Holy Cross College Preparatory Academy. We believe that if we improve the academic standards of the school and we make it accessible and affordable and safe for our students, we're going to be able to serve not only more students in our school, but also raise the bar and the standards for all the local schools in the community. And I can tell you that the key to sustaining a community is not just having high-performing Catholic schools or private schools or charter schools, but also public schools. And we want to make sure that our families have a choice when it comes to education, and we certainly have to hold up our end of the bargain. So what I'd like to briefly talk about are some of the enhancements that we've actually brought to the school beginning this year. The first of which, as I mentioned, is we're now a college prep school with an extreme emphasis around building a college-going culture, college-going environment. By the time you're in high school, you should already know what you want to do from a college perspective. And it's never too early to start talking to kids about the importance of college, what it takes to get to college, and the commitment that it takes, not only from the teachers and the staff, but from parents and from students. In order for us to be college prep, we had to make some significant changes to our curriculum. As I mentioned earlier, from an academic perspective, the achievement gap, unfortunately, was alive and well in our school. Many of our minority students are behind academically. So in order to mitigate that, the one thing that helps eliminate the achievement gap is more time in the classroom. You can emphasize more math, more science, more reading, but when kids are behind, they need more time in the classroom. Therefore, our school day is going to be from 8 to 5 o'clock every day. Now, many said, well, Rick, boy, that's pretty aggressive. You know, the kids are going to get tired. So, which is probably true. But from a social perspective, what we found is in many of our communities, our families work. They work jobs from 8 to 5, 8 to 6 o'clock at night. And one of the things that they struggle with is finding safe, affordable, quality daycare. We've always offered an after-school program that was fee-based. But we believe that if we offer a longer school day, it's going to take some of the pressures off of our parents to be able to know that, you know, up until 5 o'clock, they're going to be in a learning environment. Now, in order to justify a longer school day with the kids and to keep them engaged, we're going to introduce a variety of theme-based electives. I think oftentimes what we're seeing today in many of our public schools with some of the budget woes that we're facing is that you see art classes, music classes, foreign language classes tend to go away in some cases. We're actually bringing those type of programs to the campus. So we'll have a traditional school curriculum from 8 to 3, and then from 3 to 5, we're going to offer theme-based electives like arts and culture, sports and nutrition, computer training classes, foreign language. This way our kids are learning up till 5 o'clock, but they're also engaged with different electives and curriculum, so it keeps them motivated and also keeps them focused on the importance of college. Now, in order for us to fully meet these academic standards that we've set, we have formed a unique partnership with the University of Portland. There's various Catholic universities across the country that have programs where they actually send teachers to local Catholic schools across different regions in the United States. We have formed a strategic alliance with both the University of Notre Dame, and in this case in West Sac, with the University of Portland, where they're actually sending teachers to our school. These teachers are also engaged in a Master's of Education program at the University of Portland. So they teach with us during the school year, and then during the summer they go back to the university to obtain their master's degree in education. The 4 teachers that the university have sent to us actually live on campus. And so they're going to live actually on site at a convent that's been occupied by the Sisters of Mercy for the last 55 years. The Sisters of Mercy have moved on, and now our teachers actually live on campus. They'll also be engaged in different works around the community and getting involved in some of the different projects that we want to do from a community standpoint. The teachers from the University of Portland, they're trained in working with students that are behind. They're also specifically trained in combination classes. And now we have the resources from the university to add more acumen to curriculum, to teacher training and development. This is the first time that the University of Portland has expanded its program to California. And we're very lucky to be able to bring that here to West Sacramento. Finally, we want to make sure our school is affordable. You can build these superior academic models for our kids, but if it's not affordable, simply kids will not come and families won't be able to afford to attend. So we've lowered the tuition to $2,400 a year, which is about $1,200 less than a traditional Catholic school tuition. Keep in mind that we're not charging for the longer school day model. So from an economic perspective, and with the financial aid that's available to our families, both Catholic and non-Catholic, we feel that this school should be a lot more accessible than it has been in the past, and still the ability to deliver high-quality education. Over the last several weeks, many of you may have heard about some of the capital improvements that we've undertaken on the campus. We want our kids to feel good about the school. My first assessment when I drove by in January to do an assessment of the school was the school didn't look presentable. In fact, I thought it was closed. And I know that oftentimes when finances are tight and you struggle, oftentimes facilities tends to be the first thing that goes. And I think that was the case at our school, quite honestly. So we've invested a significant amount of money in a 5-year capital improvement plan for the campus. This year, we've repainted the entire school. We've repainted the entire gym. I've heard from members of the community when they walked by, and it looks like a brand new school. First day of school yesterday, parents and kids walked in, and I can tell you, no one felt poor. No one felt underserved, and we've evened the playing field. Our kids felt good about the school, and again, the appeal and the appearance, I think, is very important as our kids go on this very rigorous academic endeavor. The city of West Sacramento has been very instrumental and very helpful in getting this project going. We took over the campus in July. We had an ambitious plan on the capital improvements.
Randy Goodwin has been a tremendous asset and a tremendous partner in helping us get the school to where we needed to get to in order to open up yesterday. Jason Rizzi, your fire marshal, has been instrumental in ensuring school safety. We identified early on that there were some safety issues on the campus, non-intentional, but it just happened over the years, and instead of wasting time and pointing fingers, we've put work together to address the safety issues of the campus. But the entire city of West Sacramento has been very, very helpful. We've had a core of volunteers from Dwayne Johnson with Comstock Johnson Architecture, John Procida Landscaping. They've pitched in and done some great work on the campus. Todd Bird Construction, Guzman Electric. We were able to pull together with the leadership of the city a plan to get the school up and running, safe and occupiable, so that we could start school yesterday. We had 100 or so kids show up for the first day. And we're in a position, obviously, to serve more children. But the enhancements and the improvement to the school is certainly part of the plan, but the greater opportunity that we see is greater access, not only to the school, but to the campus, via some of the community services, like the St. Vincent de Paul. We're bringing in ESL classes, and we'd like to partner with Washington Unified School District to offer classroom space. We think there's opportunities to partner with Parks and Rec to make use of some of our assets and some of our facilities to serve the greater community. So this is not clearly a play just to sustain a small Catholic school in West Sacramento. We want to be a hub of the community. We know the role that we play. We have an incredible outreach, through our parish and through our community. And I want to make sure that the mayor and the council know that our commitment of sustaining this institution in West Sacramento. And on behalf of the bishop and the diocese, we are here. We're investing in our school. This is something that we take very serious. And again, we appreciate the time and the commitment and the partnership. And I look forward to working with all of you in the city in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions necessarily, but I did feel that having an opportunity to talk to you last week and get sort of a ground floor understanding of kind of where the school is headed, because I think there's been a lot of interest, a lot of concern, as you said, over the last several years, and I felt that what you had to offer and your vision and kind of where the diocese is headed is something that the entire community needs to know, because you're absolutely right. It's a rallying point. It has been for many years. And I think people want to know. And so I felt that having you come here, I think you provided a lot of good information for the community. And I would imagine that there are going to be a lot of questions from folks. So I suspect that they contact the school for questions or concerns?
Yeah, certainly. You can contact our principal. One of the things that we did strategically was we brought in a principal that actually speaks Spanish as well, understanding the needs of the community. And I think oftentimes we underestimate the importance of being bilingual. But Julieta Mendoza is the principal of the school. She's a seasoned public school administrator, and this is her first opportunity in a Catholic school. And so she's learning her way, but she's very accessible to the city, as well as the parish and obviously the diocese, to work together for any needs from a community standpoint.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
I work in this sector, in the school sector, during the daytime, and I'm extremely impressed with the work that you're doing there, on all facets. Touching all the key points that we know is clear from the evidence matter in terms of student achievement, and particularly the kids that are at this school. And it's so much more than just a single school, and it's much more than just the classrooms. Holy Cross, the church, Holy Cross, the school are one of the most important centers of the neighborhood and of the community as a whole. And so sustaining them, I think so many of us were devastated to see the closure on that original list. Because of its implications for the neighborhood, for the community, and for the economic and educational and social opportunity of so many kids in the neighborhood and throughout the city. So I'm personally very encouraged at the work that the diocese is doing, that you personally are doing there, and and working with the volunteers and the parents and the parish members who have been holding it together by hook and crook and Pierogi and everything. They've given every bit of their heart into this institution for so many years, and it's fantastic to see the attention and the investment come, and the smart strategy that you're deploying there. And 15 years ago now, the community college district here said, it's just not working. We can't really do a program here. We think we're going to close our community college services. They had like 5 classes here. And they looked at it, and we persuaded them. They came to the same conclusion. They said, well, instead of closing, let's make a big investment and see what we can do. Today, we have that college across the street as a result, and it is one of the most popular and fastest growing community college centers in all of California. And what happened, and we tapped into this very strong desire for educational opportunity and for achievement and for going to college, or even if you don't go to college, have the skills that you need, whether you're going to college or into good paying jobs. We tapped into that with that college, and it's exactly what you're doing, and it's so needed. So thank you very much for coming tonight to brief us, but particularly thank you for the work and for the leap of faith that you're taking to make this happen.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the consent agenda, which is items 4 through 8. We're going to remove item 7 from the consent agenda, the request of the city manager for an alternative recommendation. Are there other items on consent for separate question or comment? Okay, item 6 is consideration of revised program guidelines for the use of sewer credits for restaurant attraction and retention. Mr. Johannesson.
Who's up on this? Diane? No, there she goes. Yeah, my main concern about, it's not the sewer credit program I think is great. It's the prioritization may be a little bit too rigid in my view. What we've done is we've done a restaurant survey that basically focused on West Capitol Avenue and Washington neighborhoods and kind of where our urban core is going to be. We didn't do a citywide survey. My concern is that when these credits are applied to a preference system, economically, those areas may still lag with other areas in town. For example, the IKEA area. We're seeing a lot of new development out there. IHOP and other restaurants that are going out there that aren't locating on West Capitol Avenue or the Washington neighborhood. And it basically because of pure economics at this point, and that the sewer credits really aren't going to fix that in the short term. So my concern is that if we do have places in town where the market tends to be there, which could be that area, could be other areas, that we're flexible enough to not really stick tight to this priority list, but look at those other options as well. For example, if a restaurant's coming out, another one out in River Point, or some other part of town that doesn't happen to be in these particular top 2 focus areas, that the city would look at that, basically, well, we've got something going now, let's look at applying these credits at this point versus let's hold off and wait until some point in the future when, we can focus this, something comes in on West Capitol or Washington neighborhood. And I wouldn't want to start expending those all, but at least some consideration that economically, there may be places in town that aren't in this focus area that may have things happening a lot quicker than the focus area, and that the sewer credits may be allowed to be used in those areas. And the policy right now doesn't really allow for that, or it looks like it would be difficult.
Is it your desire to allocate credits by geographic area rather than by the type of restaurant? Because that's another option that we could do to ensure that we actually have credits remaining for the areas that may lag behind other areas that develop first.
Well, there's a couple of points that this restaurant survey made. First of all, it was geographically isolated to those particular areas. And secondly, it was pretty clear that people want sit-down restaurants. So I'm not advocating for a change in the restaurant types. What I'm advocating for is that these sewer credits should be looked at being used citywide if the right opportunity comes forth. Of course, if no opportunities come forth, then we have a plan to continue to use those, revitalize our downtown and civic center and Washington Boulevards. But I just want to make sure that these credits are going to be available to all parts of town.
As it's written now, they are available to all parts of town with a priority given to the strategy area first, and then secondarily to areas just near the strategy areas, and then citywide. The practical application of that is, as you describe, it will be on a first come, first served basis, with the exception that where we've reserved credits for fine dining. If we don't get very many fine dining initially, those credits will remain allocated to those types of restaurants. So it's possible that we could use the credits for all other areas before we get to West Capitol Avenue. That is a true statement, and if that's not your desire to move forward in that manner, then we would need to adjust this to reserve for those specific areas. Otherwise, it's possible that we will exhaust them before we get to West Capitol Avenue, for example.
I mean, I think it's important to reserve for those areas because that's what we're trying to do, is revitalize West Capitol Avenue and the riverfront. But maybe there's a percentage that would be reserved or a maximum that would be useful outside the area, something along that line. I wouldn't want to, off of Industrial Boulevard, if, we get a flurry of restaurants and we use them all in that area, that's going to kind of destroy our ability to do what we want to do here. So I don't think it's a good idea to do it on a first come, first served basis, but perhaps, 50% or some percentage that would be allowable outside that target area. And I'm not really sure what that percentage would be. That would be one way to approach it, but I'd be certainly glad to open it up for discussion with my brethren.
May I ask a clarifying question? You want to ensure that we do have credits remaining in all the categories for West Capitol Avenue, Central Business District, and Washington area?
Yeah, I mean, not the total, we have credits available, not the total credits, but credits available to do what we need to do there. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Beers.
Yeah, with all due respect, Mark, I kind of lost your train of thought. It sounded like you started off wanting to create more opportunities citywide, and now you're arguing to have percentages for each group. I kind of got lost, but letting that go, I think you've put together a responsive plan. I mean, if I were to have my way, I'd actually say we're focused on the primary area and the secondary area totally. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do is facilitate building up those kinds of businesses near our new downtown and along the river. So you've actually, to me, put too much flexibility in this. If we're going to talk about how we want to allocate these, then I'd rather put a very strong emphasis on 1 and 2 and leave some opportunities for 3 in it if there's a really good deal coming up. But I want restaurants downtown and along the river. I mean, that's where we should invest. I think that's what the community wants, and we're spending a whole lot of money to try and achieve that. And this is just, to me, a leverage point to do that. Especially the IKEA, the River Point Center, they're in a different market. They've got a lot of different things going for them, and they've got a lot of people going there. They should be able to compete better than a restaurant that's going to come down here because we don't have the population yet. So people that come here now, to me, they're kind of groundbreaking, like the Blue Blitz. I mean, we need, that's a small example, but that's what we really need to encourage. So I'm not totally sure, again, where you're headed, but if we're going to change this at all in terms of what's proposed, then I would be saying, 80% of it to 1 and 2 and the rest citywide if we're going to start talking percentages. So.
Yeah, I think, Wes, you probably were clearer on my intention than I was, but that's really where I was going with this, that we have a priority area, which is West Capitol Avenue and the riverfront, but we also have to understand there could be opportunities that are too good to pass, so we should be prepared to allocate sewer credits for that on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, well, I think the first one does it. What the staff report does, I think, accomplishes that 100%. My fear is it actually could go too far in that direction. So.
Yeah, I agree, actually, with what you have both said, especially given Diane's clarification, which made me nervous, which was that the preferences didn't really mean anything unless all 200 credits were being demanded at the same day, right? Because you described it, well, it'll be first come, first served, which is no preference at all, unless we have a rush of restaurants all at once, which would be a great problem to have, but that seems highly unlikely. So the idea that we might reserve, just like we have done on the types of restaurants, if we said we're reserving 100 credits for the primary focus area. We're reserving 50 credits for the secondary focus area, and the other 49 can be used anywhere in the city. That accomplishes two things. One is it says that's the priority, but it also, for folks, if you did want an Oprah restaurant in the town center or at River Point, you would know there are some credits, right? So you wouldn't have to wonder how's this preference going to be decided in Diane's head. But you'll know there's some that are out there. If you're about to if 46 of them have been allocated, then you better get your application in the door. So to me, that might be one way to do it. Is say 100 in the first category, 50 in the second category, and the other 49 are citywide. It seems like it might accomplish both objectives.
And then still preserving the fine dining,
Yes.
casual dining, and locally
Yeah.
owned.
Yeah. So you just matrix the.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's definitely an alternative we can do.
Okay. All right. This is a consent item, so.
Well,
that,
Mr. Mayor, if we're finished with the discussion, I'd move the consent with a specific change to item 6 to allocate, according to the 100 to primary, 50 to secondary, and the remainder for citywide.
So noted, thank you.
okay. So the consent agenda with that modification's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item 7 is consideration of approval of plans and specifications and award of construction contract for the Tower Bridge Gateway Modification Project East Phase. And the council has a memo from the city clerk regarding a revised recommendation on this item. Ms. Pasco?
The Tower Bridge Gateway East project, which I'm going to refer to as TBG East after this because it's a mouthful.
Thank you, Carolyn.
It's a construction project. Will be converting the existing undercrossing at 3rd Street and the incomplete intersection at 5th into four-way at-grade signalized intersections. We advertised this construction project at the end of July, received bids on August 24th, and prepared our staff report based on the apparent low bidder. After some more careful examination of the bids we received and the specifications that we had put out, we'd like to change the staff recommendation and recommend that we actually that the council reject all bids and that we re-advertise the project. This is due to some technical irregularities in the bid specifications and in the bid documents that we received. Our plan is to correct the bid document, the specifications, and make them internally consistent, use the right forms, conform them with the Caltrans standard, and then re-advertise this Friday. We would then have a new bid due date of September 21st and hopefully be back to council for a recommendation for council award on October 6th. One unfortunate consequence of this is that we won't have the time in that schedule I just outlined to advertise locally. So I'll plan on calling up the chamber about some outreach to local vendors and how they might be able to participate. But it also means a consequent delay in our completion date. We'd originally anticipated completion in April or May, and therefore minimizing our potential conflict with the baseball season. So this is probably going to extend our completion into June. And we'll have to look at our specifications, look at what kind of adjustments we can make to avoid any interference with circulation and access to Raleigh Field.
Mr. Beers?
Yeah, well, I'm sure we're all in agreement this is unfortunate because it's a tight time frame too. Well, it wasn't the only, but the most significant thing you said, though, was hopefully you get back by October 6th. And I would prefer that that's not a hopefully, that's a
We'll do everything we can to get back to you on October 6th.
Well, what would be the reason you couldn't?
If we find a need for any further addendum or to extend the bid date any further.
I'm just saying we should be pretty knowledgeable about this project at this juncture. So I would hope that that's not going to be something that's a likelihood.
Yeah. I think chances are slim.
Pardon me?
I think chances are very good. We will be.
Yeah, I would prefer that the staff stop using qualifying terms and be, I'm serious. I mean, it's a little bit funny, but I think you need to be accountable that you're going to get it done on the 6th. Yeah. And then if you don't, then you have to have very good reasons. So you need to come up with a plan right now that makes that the date, not one that it can slide again. That's my point.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
But the motion, is the motion just to reject all the bids?
That's correct.
Yes,
Huh? Is that the whole motion?
that's the whole motion.
Okay, because there's a lot of stuff in the original alternative 3 that I actually don't want, about jeopardizing one.
Just to reject all bids and re-advertise.
Yeah, that would be my motion.
Okay. It's been moved by Mr. Beers and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Villegas. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item 9, being continued at the request of the city manager. Seeing no objection, that'll be the order. Council calendar, Ms. Richardson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're going to have, this month is going to be several celebrations here in the city for things that are happening. On September 10th, we're going to be celebrating the streetscape ribbon cutting. That project is complete. We'll be celebrating that then. On the 20th, the Bridge District groundbreaking will take place over at Rayleigh Field. And then on the 30th, we're going to have the Transit Center ribbon cutting. And I wanted to point out one error in the October council calendar. When the council adopted the meeting schedule at the beginning of the year, we canceled the October 20th meeting, and we were having a special meeting on October 13th. So our meeting schedule in October is the 6th and the 13th, and no meeting on the 20th. That's all, thank you.
Questions on the calendar? All right, city manager reports.
I have a couple of items I wanted to brief the council on. One is that there's a special event that is going to occur on Friday and Saturday of this week. It's a large-scale public assembly. It's the 10-year anniversary of an event that was similar to this in Washington, D.C. They're anticipating maybe 18,000 people at Rayleigh Field on Friday, and then on Saturday there'll be an assembly of maybe 50 or more thousand people in downtown Sacramento, but they'll be using Rayleigh Field as a staging area. So I wanted you to be aware of that because it's likely to identify crowds and traffic that would otherwise be unusual. It's a 6 o'clock event on Friday, and so it would coincide to some degree with the normal commute hour. So wanted you to be aware of that. The council had some questions about the SAFER grant. That's the grant that funds firefighters. And we've been working on an application for about 2 weeks. And at this point, it doesn't look very promising that we will be either highly ranked or possibly even eligible. Here, the standards are a little bit different than they've been in the past. In some sense, they seem to be more liberal, but the priority is to replace firefighters that have been laid off, which, in fact, that sort of isn't the case here. But more particularly, there's a sort of a rule that wouldn't be evident to a lot of people, and that is that if laying firefighters off brought you down below a level of attack that you would want to sustain, then you would be eligible. If it doesn't, then that's a problem. In our case, we are maintaining 17 with an officer coming, making a total of 18. That's the level of attack that's anticipated for a community of our size. And we, in fact, got an earlier SAFER grant to bring us up to that level. So in order to get down below that level, we'd have to lay people off so that we wouldn't meet the criteria of the earlier grant, which would mean we'd have to give money back to make us eligible for the current grant. And we haven't laid anybody off. And so it's likely that we won't be eligible, but we're continuing to look at it, and it's possible we'll file an application in any case in the unlikely event that they have more money than they have applications that were extremely well qualified. But I know that's a disappointment to a number of you, and it certainly has to the fire staff, because we were hopeful of being able to use this as a way to bridge some of our staffing issues. I also wanted to note, and I think some of the council has acknowledged this, that this was the period where we had then the retirement from PARS take effect for most of the people in that group. And so this week has been a collection of small and somewhat larger, this week and last week, celebrations, commemorations, ceremonies, and the like. And I think it's worth noting that we're talking about literally hundreds of years of experience leaving the door, and it leaves a lot of us in the operation a little bit apprehensive about where we're going in the future. And so I wanted to acknowledge that. Some of you have heard about the CC Tech High School that has been proposed and is being developed in the area out at River Point Industrial Park. And it's been a struggle really from the beginning to try to sort this out in terms of what will be required and how they will be able to achieve their target opening, which is the September 14th, I believe. We have yet to receive the necessary application for building permits to do the tenant improvements, and there are some other environmental issues that have to be addressed as well. So we're somewhat concerned that this is likely to not happen in terms of the schedule they've proposed. And I wanted you to be aware of that, because I can anticipate that when that situation arises, you may be faced with a number of parents and others who would contact the city and want to know why their students couldn't be enrolled and active in the new school. And so we're awaiting an application, so it's a little bit hard for us to do much more until we've received an application. We're prepared to process it as quickly as we can, but there are two levels of concern. One is the simple manner of the tenant improvements, and it's possible, we don't know that this is the case, that it's possible they're already working on the tenant improvements, but we don't have plans for them, and they don't have the necessary permits. But then there's one other area, and this was a previous site used for industrial processes, and there's residual chemical material in the rooms that has to be certified. And there are a limited number of specialists who can do that, and to this point, they haven't been able to sustain one or get the necessary approvals. And so those two things may well prevent the occupancy of the building by the 14th. I also distributed a memo about the hotel, providing a little bit of status, and I wanted to highlight for the council several dates that you should be aware of. Of course, on the 15th, we're coming back with a couple of items: the abandonment of the parcel, the right-of-way that is really the city's contribution to that building site, and then also we're going to ask for a modification in the design review process to accelerate that review process and really eliminate a redundancy, since the council already is the owner of the project and would have owner authority to approve the design as well. So that'll be on the 15th. And then on the 21st, there will be a community listening, actually a couple of meetings where the architectural team will be available to get people's interests and insights as to what is important about the site. There won't be building elevations or designs to look at. It will really be more trying to develop criteria and guidelines for what a design should try to achieve. That will occur in a couple of sessions in the afternoon. We'll be inviting a couple of advisory bodies, and we'll ask them to RSVP so that they can be split among the two meetings. And if it happens that there's a high level of interest in attending, then we could call special meetings for those But we're really trying to have them not be very formal and not be actual meetings, but more opportunities to engage the architectural team. They'll have people there who can ask questions, answer questions. They'll probably do a little bit of a survey technique to try to get the community's interest in what's important about this site. What are the iconic features of the site and the surrounding area that really should be reflected in the design in that location. And then on the 7th, we'll be having a technical review with the architects. This is where we will have an opportunity to go over on a preliminary basis the architectural designs. And Carol will be getting in touch with the council to try to schedule individual appointments so that you can participate with the design team on the 7th. So with that, I would be open to questions on any of the items I brought up this evening. And I would like to say that, as I mentioned last time, we're looking at canceling the second meeting in October. We're still looking at that because at this point we still have no items that are scheduled for October 13th. But the canceling would be the 13th, not the 20th.
Okay. On the school issue?
Yes, the CTEC.
Have we sent a written communication expressing our concern about this?
We have communicated in writing and verbally. There are several different people involved, and we've had the most recent conversations with the actual architectural team, and I think they're well aware, and I think they're working as quickly as they can. It's somewhat more complex in terms of tenant improvements because they're converting a use that was never intended to be a school, and so there's a lot more to it than maybe they anticipated at the outset, and maybe the advocates understood as they went into the building.
Okay, and have we let the chartering authority know?
I don't know that we have, but that's a good point. We can make sure that.
Okay. On the timeline that you've given us on the hotel, the hotel operator.
The actual agreement on hotel operator is likely to be an item that would come back to the council either on the 15th or the 15th of November, or is that right?
Or the 17th?
17th, I mean, 17th or the 1st of December. But there will be actual agreements with the operator prior to that, and there will be an opportunity for formalizing that determination, and it probably would occur sometime after the 21st of September, if that answers your concern or question.
Yes, only that, I mean, if we're going to be asked to approve moving forward on construction of the project and construction team, but we will not have at that point done anything. I mean, you will have executed some agreements with the hotel operator.
Yes,
we will not have.
We will probably execute some tenant, actually,
Interim services.
the interim services agreement with the hotel operator probably within a week. And then we'll have a formal submission to them in early part of October.
Okay. I've just, the formal selection of the hotel operator is not a trivial matter.
That's correct.
And there's no point on this process until well into it that the council approves it.
Right. It was subsumed in the meeting of the 17th, assuming that we know that it has to be in front of the council and acted on prior to you authorizing the bonds, but presumably you'd want to have that at the first formal opportunity, which would be the 17th of
Because
November.
we also meet on November.
You meet on
3rd.
November 3rd. You do.
Right. Okay. So that operator will be, that first agreement that you execute will be a public document, correct?
Yes, it will be.
So so you're anticipating that the name of the operator will be made public in the next week or two?
Yes. Yeah. As you may be aware, it's a possibility to to speculate on what it is, but we'll know with some certainty within a week or two.
I'm sure you realize this. I don't think any member of the council wants to read about it in the newspaper
Okay?
as their first confirmation.
As the first confirmation.
As the first confirmation of what's occurring. I mean, obviously, we've been involved, but, and then the design, the actual design, if we make the design review process change, the council's engagement in the design, in addition to the individual conversations, would be at what stage?
Well, it would be when you approve the, on November 17th would be the formal,
Okay.
but you would have an opportunity in advance of that on the 7th.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. City Attorney report?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Staff direction from members of the council? And we have no future agenda item requests?
No direction. I just wanted to just take a moment, if I could, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment. I think, Toby, you touched on it a little bit, and I think this week has probably been difficult for a lot of folks with all of the pending retirements, some that have already left, many that that left yesterday, I think, some that are leaving within the next couple of months. And this is going to be a huge culture change for this entire community. A lot of these folks, if you look at the list of folks who have been working in this community since 1969, 1978, 1977. So if you identify the 17 folks who are going to be roughly 17 who are going to be leaving or have already left recently, that's a collective 354 years of service. That's a lot of years, and I know a lot of these folks live in the community, so folks in the community who live here know them by a first name basis, particularly a lot of the folks in the Public Works Department. And I know that the folks who make up this list, some are here this evening, their work has been a huge lift for this community over the last years. And I think the one thing that is comforting to know is that the folks that are going to remain here have learned a lot from you and from them. And so if I could, Mr. Mayor, if I could just read the names of the folks who we're not going to see around here very much longer, but I think are golden in our success, and I think warrant their names to be identified in the record as sort of closing it out. Folks who are not going to see anymore around town are, or at least not in a formal capacity with the city, is Dan Harris, Les Bowman, Henry Serrano, Debbie Singh, Gary Valine, Willie Tears, Steve Ricola, Jody Rizzo, Denise Cutco, Tina Gontarski, James Elrod, Mark Sanders, Bernie Heyer, Terry Ali, Mike Reed, Belinda Arthurs, and Ed Healy. And I just wanted to just mention those names, although we're not doing anything formal. I think it's worth noting who the folks are who've done tremendous work in our community.
Thank you for that, Mayor Pro Tem Villegas. And Mr. Beers. Mr. Beers moved that we adjourn. Mr. Johannesson has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Meeting is adjourned.